Shalom and welcome to my channel. So my side hustle hobby is content creation. My husband's side hustle hobby is helping people with their finances. He has, besides running our finance, has helped over 30 people in Israel manage their finances, start investing. So in this video, I wanted to share with you everything you need to know in order to run your finances in Israel, all the terms, everything you need to know. So I'm a complete beginner because Natan manages everything. So this is going to be good for complete beginners. So the first thing that you say to a client that comes to you is you ask them what their financial goals are.
Well, there's a big difference between reality and dreams. So I want to first figure out if there's any way to get to their dream. If someone says, I have a shekel, I want to have 20 million shekels, we need to sit down and have a talk how you're going to get there. On the other hand, some people have already reached their dreams, they just don't realize it. So you really have to understand what people's goals are and where they want to get to.
What is an example of a goal that someone said to you?
Let's say someone says that he wants a house and a few million shekels to retire with. That could be a financial goal.
In Israel, most people will have a mortgage, right? Most people buy homes because the prices in Israel, almost always over the last 20 years, prices in real estate have always gone up. So it is generally a very good investment. People always talk about that apartment that they should have bought 30 years ago in Tel Aviv, in Chulon. They had an opportunity. It's always a missed opportunity. And then if they have extra money at the end of the month after their mortgage, then you'll explain to them how to invest. But there's another philosophy, which is investment in the stock market, index funds compounded over time, that does, would you say, even better than real estate?
Well, Israel's in a unique situation in the past 10 years, I would say, or maybe a little bit more. But if you look more backwards, my philosophy is I prefer to invest in stocks. I don't really want to deal with real estate, with renters or buying a place, lawyers, things going wrong. I enjoy being a renter, but it's a very emotional, and it's not. It's
people
not
want to
all
own
about,
a home.
right.
They want to grow their family in a home that they own.
Right. It's not all about the money. Sometimes you also have to think about the psychological.
Right. Like if you're looking as purely as an investment, if you have $1 million shekels over 20 years, which is the better option financially, you might get one answer. But next, when it comes to income and expenses and budgeting, generally you want to have as high income as you can, low expenses as you can. We have a video about that, how we try to minimize our expenses. I'll link that video below. And also when it comes to budgeting, like what do you tell your clients about if they should budget or about their income and expenses?
It really depends. It's everything. Everyone has a different way of working with finances. Some people really need to start the month with a budget and know how much they're going to spend and what their income is. Some people could be a little bit more relaxed. They know they're going to stay within their goals of spending. It really depends how you like to work. I tend to see that people need some sort of like budgeting frame to at least know. Some people don't even know how much income they have and how much they spend every month. So it's very important to get the numbers right and figure out if you're on track, if you're even saving money, not saving money. Some people are sometimes shocked by the results.
At the end of every month, we sit with our credit cards and we kind of go over the list if there's something that we don't understand.
Right.
So
and to see how much we're in our spending budget, like what we would like to spend.
They just had a video on the news about this, about couples in Israel that are struggling with their finances, and like they said, yeah, well, we went to Thailand, we deserve a vacation, and that set us back financially, but we deserve it. What would you say to people like that?
Well, again, you have to go through your income and your expenses and you figure out how you're going to reach your goals. If your goals are modest, perhaps you could live that way. If you have some goals for retirement that are different, or for some other thing you're saving for, you want to have a bar mitzvah or you want to buy a car, then you're going to have to budget and maybe delay some of the expenses you want to do, delay that vacation, or don't buy that thing, so on. Like you really have to have the eyes on the ball and like figure out what you want to do.
When it comes to cash flow, money coming in and out, in Israel we call it osh, which is an abbreviation for over v'shav. In English, this is called your checking account, and we're going to talk about fees to this account, and we're going to talk about the emergency fund. So when it comes to fees in your banking account, what do you tell people about your fees?
So the first document you want to open in Israel, you get every year a document called Teudat Zehut Bankait. If I would translate it, it would be bank identity card. Pretty much it's the document that shows all the fees you're paying.
How do you get this document?
You just go on the website of your bank and you could just find it there. It should be produced every year, so you could look for the last one.
And it shows you all your fees that you're paying to the bank.
Yeah, over the year. If you're paying any monthly fees or investment fees or stuff like that. So it's very important to know what fees you're paying. You should probably be paying zero. So
you're paying zero.
Yeah, so you should go over that and make sure you're not paying fees to the bank. Usually you want to have what's called an emergency fund. An emergency fund is money that it's not for spending. It's money that you keep there for an emergency. It's not because you want something. It's if there's an emergency, your car broke down, medical, chas v'chalila, or something like that. So usually people like to say, it depends how stable your job is or what financial situation you're in, but the common sense is usually to keep 6 months of expenses. And instead of just leaving that money in your checking account, you can invest it. So usually what people do is what's called a keren kaspit. I think in English it's called a money fund. You usually get better rates than a deposit. It's totally liquid. You could sell it whenever you want. And it's taxed favorably. I don't want to get into it, but it's taxed according to inflation. So if you haven't made any money on it, then you don't pay any taxes. And that's a good way of keeping the value of the money, because otherwise inflation will start eating it up slowly.
So basically, to have this emergency fund, you recommend to put it into the keren kaspit?
Unless you're American. If you're American in Israel, then you can, but it's a little bit complicated. You have other options. So that's another thing to notice, that Americans outside of the US, you are still taxed in the US. And there's something called PFIC, PFIC, which I don't remember the abbreviation is, but it pretty much means that your investments outside of the US are subjected to very high taxes. So you really have to be careful with that.
So to an American in Israel, not to invest in keren kaspit. Just leave the emergency fund as is.
No, there are other options. Let's not get into that.
Okay.
There are other options, but it's more complicated.
So in Israel, we have investments that your employee is required to do by law, and you have investments that you can do. So Nathan, what are the investments that the state makes your employee invest for you?
So there's something called a pension. A pension, the employee gives 6.5%, contributes 6.5%. You contribute 6% every month. Plus there's something called severance, פיצויים, which the employee usually gives 8 1/3. Most people have a contract which is called סעיף 14, which means the severance is paid every month. If you are not signed on סעיף 14, then severance works a little bit differently, but most people today have the סעיף 14, so that's the way it works. So you're contributing 20% of your salary every month to your pension. That's a big amount. So when you quit your job, you could take out part of the severance, or you could keep it to your retirement. Usually it's recommended to keep it for your retirement. Except for that, most employees have what's called a study fund, קרן השתלמות. The employer contributes 7.5% and you contribute 2.5%. But for most people, this is capped to the tax limit, which is 15,712 shekels. The employer gives 7.5% of 15,712. And you give 2.5%. And the study fund is closed for 7 years. It's invested in the stock market. You could choose your different places where you want to invest it. But then after 7 years, you can take out the money. I recommend for most people to try not to take out the money, but to keep it for your retirement, because the beauty of this is that you don't have to pay taxes on the gains.
If you invest privately, not through this fund, you will have to pay taxes on the gains.
Exactly, yes, once you draw it out.
It's a big...
But it could be a difference of fees. There are all these simulations you could do that if your fees are too high in the keren השתלמות, it might be worth drawing it out and investing it yourself. So you should check with an expert and figure out what works for you.
But how do I lower my fees in all of these?
Oh, so in Israel, it's like we call it Bazar Turkey, Turkish bazaar. Everything is up for negotiation. You should really email all of your providers and just say, I got a better offer, I want a better offer.
Wow.
And you can even lower and save tens and even hundreds of thousands of shekels I've seen for people paying too high fees, depends how much money you have. So you totally want to do that. There's also something called Kranot B'rat Mechdal. This is for pension. That is a fee that the state set, that some companies came and there was like a competition between them who could give the lowest fees. And it's quite low, so if you don't have good fees, you can just move to one of those funds in the pension.
Cool. Then there's investments that you do on your own separately.
So there's a few options. I'm going to go through the main ones. There are tons of options. You can invest in real estate. You can invest in all these weird things that you probably shouldn't, but there's lots of options. But the main options in Israel is investing yourself. It's called חשבון מסחר עצמאי. It's just an account you have. You invest. If you sell, you pay 25% taxes on your gains. And that's a very good option if you know what you're doing, and you should read up about it and consult what passive investing is and index funds and so on if you don't know.
That's through your חשבון השקעות.
Right, that's through your investment account.
Okay.
And you could open one in the bank or with a private company. In Israel, it's usually better to open in a private company because you just pay a fixed fee per month. You don't pay a percentage.
Okay.
And it's very safe and it's regulated. So most people should go with that unless you have some crazy deal with the bank, which most people don't. Another option is for people that are afraid to do it themselves. They don't really know what they're doing. There's something called a קופת גמל להשקעה. That has some preferable taxation if you get to 60 and you draw it out. But the fees are so high that usually it's not the best option, but I always say that it's better to invest than to not invest. I think you could learn, and it's quite easy, or you could take a professional to teach you how to...
Like Natan?
to invest and how to do passive investment with index funds. It's not that hard. It's a few hours. If you need help, you could schedule an appointment with me. But for some people that are afraid or want to do it themselves, קופת גמל להשקעה is a valid option.
The last type of investment is a new law that started in Israel in 2017. חיסכון לכל ילד, investment for every child. What is that?
Saving
and what do I
for
do?
every child.
Saving for every child. What do I...
So first of all, it's mandatory. If you don't choose anything, they'll choose it for you.
The default.
The default, right? The state gives around, I think, 50 shekels every month. You can double it and give another 50 if you want to. And this is money that is invested for your child. And you get a little bonus when you're 18 and 21 if you leave it in. And
that also, I don't pay taxes on the
capital gains, right, if you take it out when you're 21. And the government pays the fees. So it's a nice way to get kids interested in money and like the stock market and what's going on.
You could teach them about it.
Right. I think that you want to invest it passively because it's such a long-term investment. When you look at investments, you always want to think how long you're investing for. If you're investing for long-term, you might want to take a higher risk and passively invest in some sort of index fund like the S&P 500 or the whole world like MSCI, especially for kids because it's not big amounts of money and you want to teach them and it's over 20 years, you might want to go with that and it should give the best returns also over time.
Next point is ביטוחים, insurances. So there are so many different insurances, but you recommend to your clients...
Right. So first of all, this is for Israel. Every country has their own weird system. Okay. And Israel, we have very good we pay for it through our paychecks, but most people don't notice. They think it's free. We have very good public health care.
Nathan shows me in your healthcare. You're paying a lot for healthcare because I'm always saying, healthcare is free, it's amazing.
What I say is you need to have the extra insurance for catastrophes. You don't want to wake up one day and figure out there's some sort of chas v'chalila medical emergency that will ruin you financially. Yeah. So I think the most basic thing everyone should have is the catastrophes, which is life insurance if you need. If you don't have enough assets to keep your family going, then you want to have life insurance. And of course your expenses might go up because you'll need more babysitting, you'll need more things, so you want to think about how much life insurance you want. So regarding health insurance, there are different philosophies. Some people want to insure everything, some people want to insure nothing. I usually feel that you want to insure the catastrophes that will ruin you financially. It's also relatively cheap to add these private insurances in Israel. So I recommend going over with someone, seeing what insurances you have and what coverage you want to add.
For the health
insurance. We have very good public health insurance, but some edge cases are not covered and these can ruin you financially. So you really want to cover those and it's not expensive.
We have 2 points left. The next one is taxes.
Most people know is that you can get back some taxes. So if you donate, you could get back some of that money, 35%, which is nice. If you want to donate to a cause that's dear to you.
Right, but you have to, if you want to donate to a specific cause, you have to make sure that they have this Seif 46 where they could send you some sort of
receipt that you could use afterwards.
A receipt, and then you take this receipt and you go at the end of the year.
So there's 2 ways of doing it. One, you could do during the year, in let's say November, you could go and do what's called a ti'um mas, and that means that you get a certificate from the tax department of how much money they owe you, and you go to your employer and they give you back that money in your paycheck. The other way is, if you missed already and it's the next year, you could do a tax return, החזר מס, and then you just need to fill in some form. It's a little bit complicated, but you could do it yourself or ask a professional.
The last one, which is something that no one likes to talk about, but it is important, which is wills.
Right. So in Israel, there's certain laws about who inherits you. Sometimes some of your assets will get tied up. That's part are owned by kids under 18. Some are owned by a spouse, and this can cause difficult situations that for every small thing you have to go to court. Usually you probably want to give all of your assets to your spouse, you'll trust them to take care of the kids. Some families might have a more difficult situation, but you really probably want to have a will. It makes things easier.
So that is all for today. Thank you so much to Natan for explaining to us about running your finances in Israel. If you want a private session with Natan, I will leave a link in the description box below. He has helped over 30 people manage their finances, begin investing, and this is something that he does as a side hustle. Everyone has their own interests in this family. So thank you so much for being here, and I hope to see you in the next video. Shalom!
רוצה להסביר עכשיו כל דבר מה ההבדל בין קופת גמל לפנסיה וזה, וכאילו, לא רוצה לשעמם אותם, לא?
אוקיי, סבבה.
נראה לי.
אבל קרן השתלמות זה כן מעניין.
כן, כי זה כאילו משהו אחר.